Well, welcome everybody. Here we are at another episode of Compliance in Motion. I'm super excited to have our two guests here today. They have definitely got extensive experience in safety and compliance. We have Dianne Grote-Addams, the president and owner of SafeX, and her colleague Ryan Moon, director of operations. And both of them bring such unique skill sets to the mix as they operate their company, SafeX, and help others around the region with their companies and making sure that employees stay safe and healthy on the job and get to go home in the same shape that they turned up. So welcome today's podcast, Compliance in Motion. How are you folks doing today?
Great. Thanks for
Good.
having us.
Yeah, glad to hear it. So I think, really what we want to do is jump in and learn a little bit about your background. And maybe Dianne, you can get us kicked off here. Talk to us a little bit about, you know, what was the first time? Can you remember back to like what drew you into a career in the field of safety and industrial hygiene?
It's a long way to think back, but yes, I can.
It's that pivotal moment.
Actually, I started as an industrial hygienist, and
Okay.
I found I had always had an interest in helping people, but medical school was not in my alley. So when I found out that I could use my science degree as an industrial hygienist and help people, it was a match made in heaven, so to speak. And then as I got involved, that just continued to attract me because there was so much to learn, so much to help with, and so many diverse employers who needed help.
Yep. And I think it was back in 1992 when you started SafeX. Is that the actual time period of you coming on board there, getting the company going?
That was true. In 1992, we did start SafeX, but I had a lot of work experience prior to that also. But yes, so we've been in 30 plus years of business as a consultant.
That's a very large span of time, and I would imagine you've seen a lot of changes in the career, in companies and customers that you've worked with throughout those years. Does anything in particular just spark at you? Is it like have to do with the amount of regulations we deal with today versus all the way back in 92? Or does it have to do with the mindset of people building a safety culture and the way things have shifted?
It's a good question, Tony. I don't think the regulations have increased relatively that much based over the years that I've been involved. I do think it's a change in mindset of companies coming to realize that safety is not necessarily just an overhead cost, that there is value in having your employees go home safe at the end of the day. And as you well know, it helps you retain your employees, it cuts down on training time. So overall, you become more productive. And I think as we evolve, now we're looking at total well being. So we're looking at the importance of physical fitness and mental health, not just preventing people from getting hurt.
It really has the depth and breadth of a company that has really embraced a safety culture, does not look at it as just a check the box anymore. And that depth and breadth really extends to some organizations, even beyond the workplace. And they're thinking about home safety because, people get hurt and then they can't come into work. So if you're really just thinking about the employee's well-being in general and designing programs around that, and then you also touched on the mental health aspect. Boy, we see this time and time again, people getting more focused on what can we help people to do to deal with their emotional stress and, when they're coming into the workplace and how to manage these things, especially when you get into industries like construction and things like that, where they have very high mental awareness, mental stress and the type of career that they've chosen. So I was glad to hear that you mentioned that in there as an observation. Now, Ryan, in your background, you've been working with SafeX for quite some time as well. Tell us a little bit about your experience and what brought you to the SafeX organization.
Yeah, no, SafeX was my first job out of school. when I first started here.
Where'd
I've
you
been
go
here
to
twice
school?
now. This is my second stint. So, um, I went to High University down in Athens, Ohio, and I like high school. I wanted to be. I grew up in Eastern Ohio. Really liked being outdoors. So I was thinking something in ecology, environmental, but then I also really love chemistry. So I was thinking of chemical engineering. Anyway, ended up engineering. You really got to love math, apparently, and it's I like it, but not that much. So I
Right.
decided that's not my game. Got into stumbled across a bachelor's of science in industrial hygiene degree at High University. They no longer have it, unfortunately, but the kind of fell in love with it when they told me about it. I was like, that sounds really cool. I get to do the sampling and being outside, working with people, not just at a desk, but then also get
Mhm.
to enjoy the chemistry aspect of it. And so, but like any good program, right? It's not just the industrial hygiene side. They covered everything from
Yeah.
safety and stuff. So, had a few
Yeah.
internships that I learned a lot at. Uh, Learned a lot about dealing with people. I was in a union environment that was very contentious with one of my internships, and learned how to work with people and understand where they're coming from on both sides. But then also had some industrial hygiene sampling in another location, and just had a really good mentor there. And then was lucky enough to stumble across an opening with Dianne when I graduated, and was lucky to jump on here at SafeX and yeah, spent I was looking for Central Ohio area, trying to stay in Ohio and
Yeah.
find an industrial hygiene job. And Diane had a couple of openings she's always done a great job of bringing on young people and helping develop them and help give opportunities to people. Everybody always wants 3 to 5 years experience and they don't want to give the 1 to 2. And so Diane was more than willing to give that. And um, at the time, there was Diane and her husband Bill worked here, and a couple of other really great mentors that I was able to jump on with and loved it. So, yeah,
Well, that's good news for you. And man, you definitely saw the opportunity and you got involved and it got to happen for you there. And it's not often that you're right that people are looking for entry level safety consultants. And so when you find an organization like SafeX that's willing to mentor and guide people from the classroom, so to speak, into the real world and apply those skills, you've got two thumbs up, that's for sure. And then for our listeners out there, if you're a younger person that's evaluating, career options and things like that, there are proven career paths that you can take at universities to become a specialist in safety and have a great career in safety as a consultant or an in-house individual at any kind of the organizations that we tend to work with from coast to coast are always looking for qualified, experienced people. But man, when you find one that's got a mentoring program, go in with your best shot and hopefully you get that spot, right? So many times we're talking to companies and unfortunately, the safety professional tends to end up being, the person like, hey, we need somebody to give safety to. So they just pick somebody. And sometimes it ends up being an experienced supervisor who's been doing the job for quite some time. But then often, when it comes time to teaching others how to be safe on the job, that's not their core skill set. Their core skill set might be doing the task at hand over and over and over, really good at it. But then, the old safety manager left and now we need a new one. So let's give it to Tony or Barb or whoever. Do you guys see a lot of that with your folks that you've consulted with over the years?
yeah, for sure. I mean,
Yeah, I think it's pretty common, just as you described it, right? That companies don't think about, oh, this is truly a profession that perhaps takes a good, different skill set. I have this experienced supervisor, understands my work environment, knows my people. We respect him, we trust him, he gets things done. Why couldn't he do it? And I have to say, in my first role in manufacturing, just getting the supervisors to participate with me was a good learning opportunity for me because I learned, wow, they're really good at that. But they had limitations and they didn't live and breathe safety like I did. And when I asked them to do a toolbox talk or I asked them to do training, they were really hesitant. And I didn't understand it, but it's part because they didn't have the background and they would have had to spend so many hours getting themselves up to speed to be comfortable delivering the message. and they didn't want to fail, right? They didn't want to embarrass themselves in front of their team. And so they just kind of chose maybe not to do it at all and hope no one would notice or convince me to come do it for them. But it was a good
Right.
learning for me as well
Yeah.
that it's not as easy as people think it is.
I know. So for our business owners out there that are listening today, there's certainly nothing wrong with finding that qualified, person that's been on your team for years that has been doing the job safely and correctly. But then there are opportunities to tap into expertise like the individuals from SafeX who could complement and mentor and guide individuals to really become a more well-rounded supervisor that can do their job as well as communicate safety throughout their organization. And I would imagine that's the kind of thing that you guys will do is as your customers will hire you, you'll go in and do assessments and all these different kinds of things, but you also probably identify some skill gap areas and help their leadership close those gaps. Is that fair enough to say?
Yeah. I mean, our main goal with our clients is really not to just be a ones, you know, give us this project and be done, right? We want to partner with them, develop that relationship because you find out I mean, we each have our own strengths internally too, right? And so there are certain things that I might know well enough, but someone else knows better internally on our team.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where the clients, what do they need partners with, right? And it might not be me if that's my client. It might be one of our other teammates here that's the best suited to help them with a certain task, right? And so we try to partner with them and really find out what do they need um, from a development standpoint, from a skills standpoint, and then also, sometimes it's just coaching. Like we get a relationship built with someone, and even if they switch jobs, like they call us up, they're like, "Hey, I'm at my new job," like,
Mhm.
and they have us come in and help them out because it's you got to have a network of peers that you trust, right? And so we try to be that part of that network for all our clients.
I had a call this morning with a current client, but we met 30 plus years ago when he was a production supervisor. And they decided in that facility they wanted him to take the safety manager role. And we had a formal contract at that point to help mentor him to take that role. And he went on to be thankfully successful. And then he has moved to other positions, but he's currently now heading up a multi-facility health and safety program. And as he told me today, it's about ownership. You got to own your health and safety, and he got it.
Yeah.
But he officially mentored through and then learned it and took his skill set that was natural to him as a production supervisor, learned the safety side, and now he's doing a really great job helping them across the corporation.
Well, that's a great success story without a doubt, for sure. So let's get very technical on a particular subject here a little bit and use some of your expertise to kind of help create more awareness about indoor air quality. I know that both of you have had some significant experience in this area. We work we have customers coast to coast in the stone industry, and we work a lot with stone fabricators. And I'm sure you're aware of all the stuff that's coming out of California about silicosis prevention and the rights of the owners and the employees and all this kind of stuff. That's just one kind of air quality that we have to be looking at. If you could take a minute and kind of frame it in for us a little bit as to like what when I say things like look at indoor air quality, what comes to mind first? What do you think about? What would be your go-to area to really be thinking? And it might be dependent upon like what your portfolio customers look like and things like that. But you two also strike me as individuals who have a good sense of the big picture. So talk to us a little bit about indoor air quality, safety, and compliance.
Oh wow.
Just
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Yeah, you're good at
Well,
this. So,
so
you can zero in on a couple of the stories. You don't have to say who you're talking about and
yeah,
things like that.
yeah. No, I mean, you mentioned California and the silica aspects, and so there's definitely that. In my mind, I frame industrial hygiene and indoor air quality. They're kind of the same skill set, but indoor air quality, I kind of focus specifically on more like an office setting or a residential setting, right?
Okay.
And so, just general air quality parameters, right? Particulates in the area, um, temperature, humidity, those types of things. I consider the indoor air quality. Mold falls
Mm,
under that category.
yeah.
But then on the industrial hygiene and that's more of our occupational hygiene. That's more of our industrial setting where we're doing the silica sampling. So I kind of break them up in like that.
Hmm.
Um, I think the big thing you're starting to see now is for companies that get it right. They're really diving in and they're really trying to focus on um, what not just they're going beyond that compliance aspect, right? The companies that get it are OSHA's exposure limits for contaminants under federal. Some of them are still 1968, um, established 1968, right? So they're dated. They're not accurate anymore. They're not reflective of protecting workers' health, and so a lot of those companies are out there and they're seeing some of those trends. So I think they're really trying to dive in and um, look at how they can protect and what the appropriate protection measures are. And so you see that with silica, all right? As you
Hmm.
dive into that, you've seen companies really for a while. I mean, for a long time, everybody's like, well, you can't really control silica, right? You can't control it. All of a sudden, there's a regulation now, and every single tool on the market in construction industry has HEPA filtered attachments or water sprays on it. And all of a
Hmm.
sudden, it took some investment, right? Don't get me wrong. It wasn't zero cost, but it's
Hmm.
really taken hold and protected, and I think you're really starting to see um, people recognize it. The funny part with the silica is my brother told me this weekend. He's like, they live out in the country, and he's got a friend who's like, yeah, he's like, hey, Mike wants you to come over and do silica testing on his front lawn because he's like the township put gravel down. He's like, he's got the dust blown into his house, and he wants to complain that it's silica dust. And I was like, okay, well, at least the awareness is there for people, right?
Yeah. All
But
right.
so I think that's really starting to to be a big one. It's been around for a while, but I think you're really starting to see people understand that it's not just a um, one and done type sampling.
Right.
It really takes a proactive approach to control it on all your job sites.
A continuous type of thing. And certainly it's been around for the longest time, but it definitely has gained a lot of momentum in the past couple of years. And it has
Mhm.
become a top of mind subject at almost every conference around safety and stuff like that. I'm sorry, Diane, did you have
Oh yeah.
something to add?
I was gonna say, and there are lots of other particulates and chemicals that are on the horizon. It's just that our regulations generally don't keep up quick enough. As you said, silica's been around a long time, and there is plenty of history of the negative health effects. It's just sometimes, unfortunately, we need a regulation to drive the innovative engineering controls.
Hmm.
But I think the customers that truly get it are already looking at any particulate or any chemical their employees are exposed to. How can we reduce that exposure, whether there's a regulation or not?
Yep.
And that's the whole future of health and safety and keeping your workers safe.
Absolutely. And you touched on this in the introduction a little bit. And it's worthy of definitely bringing up because it kind of ties right into what you said is that people are developing safety cultures because they know the more engaged people are with the safety culture and the more they know about the safety culture and the tactical things an organization is doing to keep them safe, the more likely they are going to want to work there. And the new generations of workers aren't just signing up to work anywhere. They're going out on the internet and looking at all of these bits and pieces of information. And when they see that, hey, I think I would want to work at that manufacturing facility. But when they see a lot of comments on the airwaves about injuries and things like that, it kind of sets the tone for culture. Maybe I'll go look someplace else to work, right? And when there's a shortage of
Sure.
people to hire that have the right skills for the job at hand, boy, you really need to up your game. And it doesn't matter if there's a regulation there or not. If you can do something to prevent somebody from getting hurt, you're probably going to attract the best talent. And I see you're nodding your head there. Is that the kind of thing that you see out there?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's really true. I mean, kind of goes along with what we said is most customers want to retain their employees, attract good employees, and they want to keep them at work. So the only way you do that is to make sure that you are protecting them. And as you mentioned, at home or at work.
Yeah. Yeah.
Coming out of COVID, we all started focusing on mental health and stress. But all of that plays a part in keeping your employees at work. And you're right, the young generation wants to work at a place they're in alignment with the culture, with the values, both how they treat their employees and even how they treat their clients, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
They want to make sure that they feel good about where they're working. So I
Absolutely.
agree.
Yep. Good. And before we move off indoor air quality, let's say that I was in a company and I just happened to call you folks and say, we haven't done anything with indoor air quality in a while. Or maybe they sheepishly are even exaggerating when they say in a while, which we can read between the lines. Maybe that means ever.
Ever?
So, from SafeX and from your areas of expertise, guide me through, like, what would you ask me? What would you say here? If this indoor air quality is something that's you're already thinking about, here are three things I need to ask you, or here's some things that I would recommend you think about doing now.
Well, that's you really want us to get technical now. So you're going to light up both of our nerdy sides, right? We're going to get
Okay,
all
well, that's
excited now.
fine.
Um, I think based on our experience, one, based on the industry, we kind of are going to have some ideas on what potential exposures might be there. So, what would those potential indoor air quality problems be? Because of our experience, we can probably guess. But, I think the things you always look for is, do employees have any complaints or concerns? Are they complaining about eye irritation or respiratory irritation? Or is there any skin irritation? Things like that is a great place to start. And you don't have to be a scientist to figure that part out. You just got to go talk to your employees. And then everybody has safety data sheets that they get as part of hazard communication regulations. So taking a look at those and seeing, do you have materials that are identified as hazardous on there? So you put those two together, and that helps to pretty much start to draw the line on where should we focus and see if there is a potential exposure that's occurring or a
Mhm.
negative air quality, as you call it. As Ryan mentioned, we kind of think of indoor air quality as the office side. And when you start talking about manufacturing or construction, we tend to call that exposures. What are the employees being exposed to? They are related. It's just that's how our brains separate them.
Narrowing down, like, what are we trying to accomplish with the sampling, right? Like, we want to get a good focus so that um, we can accomplish whatever the concerns that were brought or why you decided to look into it, right? Is really understand what you're trying to do. We could send a proposal saying, hey, we're going to sample for these things, but that might not answer the questions that you ultimately want answered. So really having a conversation of what are we trying to accomplish with the sampling, so that we make sure that we meet the goals that you or your management are looking to have solved. And then so that the sampling that we do can help answer those, right? And then, going through and trying to find the most cost effective way to do it, and go through some of the classic industrial hygiene
Yeah.
uh, plan. So
Right. So I would suspect that the answer to this next question is going to be a little bit of it depends, but maybe give us a couple of scenarios. So so we did that and we did that little analysis there, and I'm a little bit concerned as the business owner because I'm thinking like, oh boy, I'm about to embark on something that I can't afford to do. I know that's a very loaded question because what can't you afford to do? If it's going to hurt people, you should be able to, and you're in that business,
Yeah.
should figure it out, right? And then if it's not about the people for you, which I wish it would be, listeners, it could be about protecting your profits and legal lawsuits and things like that. But this journey that I'm about to get started on, give me some confidence or talk to me a little bit about it's not going to be all consuming to my business. Or is it? Or what is the plan going forward? Once we're up and running with our indoor air quality process for making sure that it's safe for all workers, is this a weekly activity, a monthly activity? To stay current with my program. And again, I kind of feel like that it depends what industry you're in, or if you're looking at the office or the factory. But I'm sure you guys have seen it all. So kind of walk us through like what we might be getting into to implement an air quality program.
I think the starting point is doing what we call a qualitative assessment, where you don't even spend money on analysis. You come and look at how the process works, how the employees handle the chemicals that they're doing or whatever they're handling, so that you can even start with some simple things that, you know what, if you close that bucket up between use, you're going to reduce exposures. Or you ask the people to shut the door in the control room, and that's going to reduce their noise exposures. So there are qualitative non-numbers and non-money expenditures that we can help identify. Are there ways to improve things before you even collect data or spend money? And then I think it does depend all over the board after that.
Yeah.
I mean, many of our customers will have us come in once or twice a year and do monitoring. So that's not horrible, but there are some regulations that, depending on what you're exposed to, you might have to do quarterly monitoring. So the emphasis there is, how can we reduce those exposures so you don't have to do quarterly monitoring? So what are the controls to put in place? And that's part of partnering, as Ryan mentioned earlier, is, if we want to partner with you, we don't want you to spend money on us every quarter. We want to help you get rid of that risk and reduce your costs by putting in long-term solutions.
Mhm. Is that something that I if I had staff, they could do the air quality or anything from noise to air quality or whatever? Or is it require specific equipment that an individual might have to invest in, which really wouldn't be, it'd be better to just outsource it and have an expert come in and do it.
You could definitely train someone to do it, right? I mean, there's a lot of training courses that the American Society of Safety Professionals or the American Industrial Hygiene Association puts on so that you can train people to collect data, right? We go out and do the noise sampling. The biggest thing is, one, you got to do it right so that the data you get is valid. And then two, you got to be able to interpret the data. And so going out and just standing with a meter and collecting a sound level measurement sounds really easy, but there's actually some nuance to it. And then interpreting the data and what does that mean? And should we spend, $20,000 putting in some noise control engineering solutions, or do we not need to, right? So it takes some training and education. So I definitely think, the mentoring thing we talked about earlier, if you've got a staff and a team, I think those are some goals for mentoring and developing internally. And you can definitely partner with people and get them trained up. And then if you've got a good consultant that you're working with, they'll mentor and kind of and coach, right? And help. Um, so I think both. There's reasons to do some stuff internally if you can. It's more cost effective if you can.
Yep. Yep.
But sometimes we all wear 10 different hats when we've been in private sector, and
Yep.
so there's benefits to using a partner, a contractor, right, to come in and help you out. So um,
Absolutely right. I mean, two things that jumped out at me right off the bat were you've got to have the ability to collect good data. And that might require certain equipment or just a specific process or something like that. But if you're going through the motions and collecting data and then making a decision off of it, you better make sure that the data is the right data and it's got the level of accuracy. And then the second thing, listeners, this is so important, and we all know this is, you can take that data, and if you want, you could use an AI tool or you could use some kind of Google thing to analyze the data. But that is not the same as having an experienced professional who has been in and out of all of these facilities, who is educated on how to read that data and, based upon your environment, come up with an appropriate plan. So you may be just looking at the tip of the iceberg in your facility and collecting that data and analyzing it, but you owe it to yourself to get an additional person involved, like somebody from SafeX, to kind of take a broader look and point you in the right direction. And with a mentoring program like they have, it certainly is something that you don't feel like you're taking a first step where it's for the rest of your life you have to pay for something. You could have the right person getting the right skills and become self-sustaining. Now,
yeah.
environmental remediation, whether it's noise or sound or chemical exposure, and it's a broad category. If I was listening to the podcast today, what, two or three warning signs would you give me that might be my aha moment? Yeah, we have that warning sign, but why weren't we paying enough attention to it? So do you have some like 2 or 3 warning signs that you could pull out of your pocket and share with readers, listeners today on, hey, if this is you, you should probably take a next step.
I'd say if you've got job positions that um, have an abnormally high turnover in your facility compared to others, that's usually a sign that there's something really uncomfortable about that job.
Yeah.
Um, where we tend to get a lot of people that you still get people that don't want to complain or don't cause a scene, so they just leave, right? Um, and then, obviously your injury, any medical surveillance you have, injury reporting, those types of things that you can track and follow on. You can see areas. And don't be afraid to extrapolate things like skin issues, right? Like people have like dermatitis or skin issues. A lot of times that is a significant sign of chemical exposures, right?
Hmm.
And so going from that direction, I think those are looking at your injury records for hearing loss cases, things like that. You can track those. Um, High turnover, and then I'd probably say, just skin conditions, probably a big one right now that you see a lot of extrapolation into chemical exposures as well.
Only thing I might add is, like, if you have a first aid box and the aspirin and Tylenol is always leaving, why? Is that because someone has a headache frequently and they're not putting 2 and 2 together? It might be work related, or maybe they have sore shoulders or sore arms from the physical aspect. So something as simple as that, perhaps even maybe inquiring a little bit, why is this particular first aid box always empty compared to the one
Right.
across the building?
Yeah, I think like there's 3 things in there that the the aspirin or Tylenol that is consistently going. I mean, you might be able to very easily say, "Oh, well, attribute it to something else," but really it could be an indicator that any kind of skin rashes, people, "Oh, I was camping this weekend," or whatever, all different kinds of things. However, if there's consistency there, you know, especially when, you look at it across the workforce over a period of time, and you might say that, maybe people aren't wearing the proper PPE all the time when they're doing this particular thing, or maybe we do need to have some special, you know, somebody with a specialty come in and take a look at what this process is, and see if there's anything that's making that happen. The turnover one I think is very interesting. We've kind of talked about this, attracting employees and of course keeping them is a big deal. But I never thought about that. And it makes so much sense that, like, if you have a particular position, don't just blame it on the task all the time that, people are doing, or maybe there's something going on with that, maybe it's a stressful position or something like that. It could actually be other variables because of the environment that are affecting that individual. And it's time to take a look at the big picture in that area. So, very interesting tip of the iceberg, kind of simple things for listeners to take away from today's podcast and be more aware of in your particular facility and organization. So, I want to wrap up today with we talked a lot about mentorship, and leadership throughout our thread on the podcast today. And just thinking about people who are, either in their career in manufacturing services, the trades, but, they're thinking about making the move from whatever position they are now into a full-time safety professional in their organization. Maybe it's just been offered to them as an option or something like that. What kind of advice might you give them, or insight into the job of being a safety professional as they're contemplating, should I take this opportunity and do a career change from working the line to being a safety supervisor, from being a full-time supervisor to being a full-time safety and compliance officer? What advice or questions would you tell them? Ask yourself this.
It's a very good question.
It's almost
Um,
like you can think back to yourself when you took this journey. I wish somebody would have said, Tony, think about this for a minute before you did.
yeah, I mean, it's all about the people, right? And so, um, I'm an introvert, and I know Diana is too, right? Like, we don't like being the center of attention, but that doesn't have to hold you back. Like, it actually helps you at times connect with people, right? And go out and
Mhm.
build that relationship. you got to build that trust with them. So I think it's really understanding and going out and listening to the workers in the plant, management as well, right? I mean, listening up and down the organization, and then finding ways and being creative in your solutions. You'll always hear like, well, we can't do that because of this. Well, you can always find reasons why you can't do something. It's the hard part's finding reasons and ways to get it done. And so I think that's where you listen to those people and really uh, find out what the concerns are and find some creative ways to get things accomplished. Um, Easier said than done, but to me, that's
Right.
probably one of the key takeaways is it's definitely a people business that we're working in. So
I mean, you've got to balance your scientific regulatory knowledge. But Ryan is so right. It's about the people because you can know all the regs in the world, but if you don't have the ability to influence, to change behavior, you're going to fail. And so that's probably the one thing I learned the hard way early on, that if someone would have given me one thing, it's like, do you want to work at influencing others' behaviors? Do you want to try to help them see that safety is really about them and not something I want them to do? And that's finding different motivators for different people. So it's can be very tough.
Absolutely love that your response focused in on the people, and working with others. And I think that truly, if that's your inner motivation to go into a career of safety and compliance, and you can explore some of the other things that Dianne and Ryan just talked about to see if it's right for you, you could be on the right track. There's a lot of people out there, listeners today, who are, they're working at a great company. They love their leadership. They love the location of their job, but they may not like their day-to-day task because they'd rather be more people focused than they currently are. Most people don't look at a safety manager, safety professional's job that way because they're always on the other side of the table and the safety manager is always coming and say, don't do it that way, or, getting rid up or whatever it is. But that's a very small part of the job if you're doing the other part of your job of motivating people to do the right thing, take their time and stay safe on the job. So great advice to share with our listeners today. Thank you very much. Well, in general, for two people who just said that they were introverts, I'd like to say you did a great job today. Thank you so much, because we're really interested in talking about top of mind subjects. These are the things that really, experts in their field resonate with every day. So, Dianne, Ryan, thank you so much for being a guest on Compliance in Motion today. We greatly appreciate you carving out some of your time to share some insights, tips, and just really some real world stuff for our listeners to latch on to. Listeners, of course, as always, we'd love for you to like, subscribe, and share the podcast and spread the news of SafeX and their level of expertise in this particular arena. And of course, at any time, reach out to vingapp.com for any of your safety needs that we can help either leverage with you or point you in the right direction to professionals like those at SafeX. Everybody have a great day, and thanks again, Dianne and Ryan.
thanks,
Thanks,
Tony.
Tony, for having us.